Bitcoin absolutely launching. We've got to pay attention to what's going on in this market right now because altcoins are setting up as well. But today we have critical Bitcoin signals we're looking at with an absolute OG who's going to be popping in here in just a few minutes. We are live on X. We are live on YouTube. We are live on Rumble. Get it active in the live chat. We got to get this music pumping because right now, everybody, the time is now. We are about to giga pump on Bitcoin. The crypto market is about to explode. Let's talk about it. Let's go. Let's get the music pumping.
Bitcoin, pump, altcoins, pump. I've been preparing for this. Can't nobody tell me nothing. Bitcoin, pump, altcoins, pump. I've been preparing for this. Can't nobody tell me nothing. Bitcoin, pump, altcoins, pump. I've been preparing for this. Can't nobody tell me nothing. Bitcoin, pump, altcoins, pump. I've been preparing for this. Can't nobody tell me nothing. SEC and its policies rely on whatever Gary thinks. Bitcoin's a flight to quality. I heard that from Larry Fink. Every hour losing purchasing power on foolish out there. It's not our fault. Blame the cult. It's the political cowards. When it comes to gas, our purchasing power just got cut in half. I sit back and laugh, open my bag, fill it with stacks and sats. Bitcoin pumping, altcoins pumping.
I think it's time to get into it, guys. I think we got to jump into these charts because there are so many signals going on right now. We need to pay attention to Bitcoin. The reversal signals that we called out about a week ago, about 2 weeks ago, actually, almost 3 weeks ago now, starting to play out. Is there going to be a retrace? Is there a bit of a bull trap? Or is all of that freaking noise? Should we just be figuring out where we should find our allocations to buy the dip? Let's dive into it. I love you. I appreciate you. Hope you're all doing well. I know I'm doing good. I am buzzing with some magic in me. Let's go. The Bitcoin market is absolutely set up for the best, most bullish part of the market that you could ever imagine, with the tailwinds of the US government, with corporations, and with very high net worth individuals stacking like you would not believe. What are we doing about it? What are we doing when we look at this market right now, showing that we have a 2.89, almost, we tapped right about $3 trillion market cap. We were just at about 2.4 about a couple weeks ago, then 2.5, 2.6, almost $3 trillion. And then when you look at this, what does this mean when we see the Bitcoin dominance is sitting here at 63%? If we have a nearly $3 trillion market cap, this is indicating that we have over 63% of this massive market cap is comprised of Bitcoin all by itself. So whether or not you hold altcoins or not, I know I do. We're going to do this one on a Bitcoin focus because this is going to be the signal for those other things. And there's so much going on within this ecosystem. There's so much to come. It is still so early, and my question for you is, what are you doing about it? Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Ding the bell. Show some love. We are live over on Rumble. We are live on X. We are live here on YouTube. If you are here and you're paying attention, drop something in the live chat right now. Do you think we're going to push up? Do you think we're going to have any sort of pullback from where we're at right now before we make the move up? Or do you think we're going to have the continuation? Welcome to the show. Welcome to the family, everybody. My name's Kellam. Welcome to BitLab Academy. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you're at. I know I'm doing good. I am glowing. I'm glowing from the inside for many different reasons. And let's go ahead and talk about it because we got some things that we got to cover. The market dropped the other day. So my question for you right now is, in that drop, did you sell in capitulation, being prone to be just tied to your fear in the market? Or can you mark yourself safe from that dip and having stacked within this, seeing the best opportunity of our life? I know that I'm marked safe. I've been stacking. I've been patient or stacking. Those are only two things that I've been doing or focused on as of late. And you know what? Are you a market doomer? Are you just, especially the content creators out there? There's so many people that were flipping to the ultimate bearishness while I was showing some bearish potential targets. If it went that way, I was overwhelmingly showing the higher likelihood, as I showed on a lot of the tweets that I highlighted yesterday with the VIX signal, with the bullish divergence, with what we're seeing with the global liquidity, the money supply ticking up, and this trade war that just feels more constructed to have some pressure on markets than actually, us going into a recession. I am Mark Safe. I hope you are too, because we've got some magical things to come. I'm going to run through a couple news stories, a couple charts, a couple signals, and then we got Dark Side coming on here in just a little bit, who is a brilliant Bitcoiner and also understands markets in a way that I could only hope to at some point. Now, looking at what's going on, what did we see yesterday? Boom is coming. No recession. Why would this be? Everybody's worried about this, and we're seeing the softening stance of what's happening in this tariff trade war right now. The White House came out slashing China tariffs to de-escalate trade war. This could be something that is absolutely happening, but we got to mind our P's and Q's right now because it feels like there's a lot of news stories going back and forth, but this absolutely sent the market on a tear yesterday. And considering it's not just what's going on with the trade war, it's not just what's going on with tariffs, but we also see Jack Mallers, the Bitcoin OG, he's the CEO that launched the Bitcoin Lightning Network, Strike, and so many other things. This very brilliant person out there in the crypto ecosystem, and he's going to be the CEO now of SoftBank and Cantor. The CEO of SoftBank, Cantor, and Tether, Bitfinex's multi-billion-dollar acquisition vehicle. They're basically going to bring Jack Mallers on to run what they're doing in this Bitcoin acquisition. They're going to be buying, I think, they're going to be starting with $3 billion worth of Bitcoin, which is about 42,000 Bitcoin. And this is great. There's so much going on here. There's so many different vehicles that are just absolutely getting stacked into right now or set up. And we've only just seen the start of the dominoes falling for what's going to be an absolute rocket ship of fuel to send these markets higher. And remember, Bitcoin has a fixed supply of 21 million. Fixed. That's where we're at, right? We've got about a little over 19 million right now, coming up on 20 million. It's going to take another near 100 years before we have that last million deployed. Basically, what is happening right now, the supply shock that's coming into these markets as we sit right now is so god darn exciting that it blows my mind that some people are bearish with what's going on. Beyond that, we had Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, said today in his talk, IMF has been whistling past a graveyard. Let me say this again. Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary of the U.S., who is also pro-Bitcoin, and also trying to figure out what we can do on the economic footing and what we're doing on this economic stage with how we're balancing our budget, how we're, affecting tariffs in an effective way so that we can drive revenue and also bring better trade agreements. Also is talking about the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, whistling past the graveyard. What could this mean? Hint, old money systems. We're seeing them starting to potentially get swallowed up by what Bitcoin has to offer. I think we're going to see something like this in the very near future. It's already happening. Every single thing that's out there that you can weigh against Bitcoin is outpacing. And it's only just beginning. Yes, Bitcoin's been around about 15 years. However, it just entered the world stage in such an incredible and dramatic fashion, with the U.S. government getting behind it, with the strategic Bitcoin reserves on a national level, but also on a state level. And we're seeing sovereign wealth funds. We're seeing, the data speaks for itself. The overwhelming bullishness that is coming, that is setting up, is just bar none, overwhelmingly incredible. So I'm only looking for buy opportunities right now. Now, of course, you want to always rotate profits. Of course, make sure you're paying yourself, but you also have to ask yourself, what risk are you taking one way or another? And it also depends on the asset that you are considering. So when we understand that also the Bitcoin gold correlation, this is from David Puel. You guys have heard of the Puel multiple, that great on-chain metric that we look at. He is the person that created that. And when we consider that, he's also pointing out here, the Bitcoin gold correlation is about to flip the Bitcoin equities correlation. And this is important because when we're seeing what's going on right now with gold, and we see potential rotation from this huge parabolic uptrend that we're seeing, this growth all the way down here, not so long ago, $2,500 all the way pushing up here to $3,500. That's a 30% move on one of the large, I mean, it's the largest store of value out there in terms of the market cap. And are we going to see a bit of a rotation from gold into risky assets, especially now that the world is waking up to this, and especially that China is being one of the biggest stackers of gold? Are we about to see a bit of a rotation out of gold? Not entirely, right? But a bit of a rotation into Bitcoin. I mean, this is such a setup of the century because it's not just gold, it's not just stocks, it's not just the dollar falling, it's not just the bullish divergence on the weekly chart. What we're seeing is a cataclysmic change for old money systems in terms of where money interest and liquidity interest is going. And we also are seeing this in the ETFs. The US spot Bitcoin ETFs saw nearly $1 billion in net inflows yesterday. The highest single day total since Trump's second term inauguration. So what does this look like? What this looks like is this right here. This is the outflows of ETFs. This is the inflows of ETFs. And you can see it's oscillating. But what we've seen here, if we actually come over here to Bitcoin and we look right here, let's actually type in IBIT, look at the Bitcoin. Let's go to all Bitcoin. Here we go. This is, I mean, very similar to Bitcoin. This obviously is a different price because this is a ETF representation of your Bitcoin. So you're buying it at smaller shares, but very similarly, this kind of gave I don't want to say leading signal, but we have this falling wedge here, the clear breakout pattern here. So although we've seen this swing in inflows and outflows on the ETFs, what do you see on the IBIT ETF Bitcoin chart? Even though it's inflows and outflows, this is still persisting with a very bullish structural move that's signaling further move to the upside. In fact, you also see this down here on the RSI on this very clear breakout of trend, retest of the strength levels, and then a continuation to the upside. Now, this, of course, is not going to mean it's going to be up only, but when you zoom out, I think it will be. I mean, we're seeing basically bull flag into bull flag. I mean, kind of falling wedge, but very similar structures, right? Breaking out to the upside. We're kind of in a critical zone right now looking at that. And this is coming into the zone that we have talked about, this previous range low all the way through here. This is tackling that huge hurdle. It doesn't mean it's into the road. I'm just saying, looking at this, super bullish looking at this. But however, although I'm looking at this super bullishly, it doesn't mean it's up only. On the near term, we very well could have a retest back into this $87,000 to $91,000 zone before we have the continuation to the upside. So while this is exciting for those of you that are trading, day trading on smaller term timeframes, great. But you also have to realize that you can't let your scalp trading and day trading analysis overweight what we're seeing on the macro charts of just an absolutely incredibly bullish structure all the way since back here at the beginning of 2023, then when we started to establish this trend on this first pullback with the higher low. So we want to see these pullbacks with higher lows along the way because this is what's building incredibly strong bullish structure and also maintaining this very, very strong and identifiable bullish trend. In fact, even with this recent pullback from $109,000 to right here about the $74,000, $75,000 mark, all we've currently done is maintain the bullish structure. This is expected with the price retesting this previous range high. So as we stand right now, notice when this broke out, look, oh, it broke out, no, higher low. Oh, it broke out, no, higher low. Still maintaining this swing back to the upside. Okay, we broke out. Oh my God, we pulled back. What we do? Higher low and also testing previous range highs. So similarly, when we're looking at this as it stands right now, on the near term, I am only bullish on the macro. On the near term, and by a very short term time frame, I'm just highlighting that there is a lot of chop opportunity in the smaller term timeframes. If you're looking at the 1 hour chart, for instance, you see if you're only looking at this on the 1 hour chart, this is signaling maybe we're getting a little bit of a pullback. We're getting large impulse, consolidation, large impulse, consolidation with a little bit of an indication that we may get some move to the downside. So again, just restating this, while I'm looking at this structure, this is overwhelmingly bullish. I am literally only bullish on the macro. However, if you find yourself victim to bringing stress to your life and just being locked into the 1 hour chart, then note especially for your longer term holdings, or you had a plan for longer term holdings. This, although I'm macro overwhelmingly bullish, it wouldn't be out of context for the price action to do something very normal and have this price have a little bit of a retrace and test back into this $88,000, $89,000 region, 88 to 91,000. Even if it pulled back down here to this yellow trend line, which is essentially established all the way back here until October 2023, this would still be very bullish, primarily because if this pullback happened, it lost that range high. You still would be establishing a new higher low. So now, while the macro is very bullish, in the very near term, I wouldn't be surprised to shake a little bit of liquidity out of the markets. And in fact, as we showed you here, the ETFs, the inflows are just exploding to new highs. Doesn't mean it's only going to go up on the inflows. We're going to have a little bit of chop along the way, but the structures that we're building in this market are so overwhelmingly bullish. I just want to get outside and jump with joy and take some people to some PTSD sessions that are getting so frustrated on the 1 hour, 2 hour, 4 hour charts. Great. If you're going to trade that, trade it with a very small percentage of your portfolio, but realize this is the best opportunity of our lives and we should be doing everything we can. Even the altcoins that I hold, I literally only hold them so I can rotate that money into Bitcoin. And if I lose all my altcoins and they all go to zero, which some people expect, it doesn't really matter because I am so Bitcoin focused while also, trying to do a little bit of that retarded VC sort of engagement on the other side of the market. But this is looking great. Look at Bitcoin. It's up to number five on the world stage of most valuable companies. Let's take that out. Assets out there. And I expect Emmy Melker, which is Scott Melker's wife, super smart girl as well. She was saying that she thinks by 2032, she expects this to get somewhere in the number 1 or 2 position, which, that means it'd be outpacing gold and a lot of things, which I can very realistically see. I think a lot of us get a little bit too perplexed or sidelined of our attention on what price targets are. Let's look at the structures now and realize this is the most asymmetric, best opportunity in the history of Bitcoin, even with it at 80 to 90,000, 90 to 100,000, because we now have a substantiated legacy built over the last 15 years. And also the largest institutions in the world are stacking in. They have Bitcoin products. We have the world stage of governments, state stage of state, local state legislative governments stacking into legislation to support Bitcoin. We have the best opportunity in the history of the world right now with Bitcoin. Even at this price, I would argue you're going to look back in 5 years and go, why wasn't I more bullish on everything that's going on? And more so right now. And we got our guests sitting in the wings. I'm going to be pulling them on here in just a second. Bitcoin just hit an all-time high. Yes, Bitcoin versus NASDAQ has had its highest daily close on record yesterday. Now, what does this mean? Does this mean it's decoupling? I think we need to ignore who gives a shit if it's coupled or decoupled, because it's going to have both of those instances along the way. It's going to have periods of time where markets are just risk on and things are traveling together. And there's other times, especially right now, where Bitcoin is really establishing its footing on world stage. And there's 2 or 3 different mentalities of traders that are out there. It's probably 17, but 2 or 3 primarily ones. 2 or 3 primary types. One is, this is a risk asset, I want to make some money on it. There's others that are like, this is the risk if I'm not holding an asset and I'm only stacking. So we're seeing it trade a little bit like a tech stock, while it's also other people saying, I'm buying and I'm never selling. So how do we decouple from this confusing sort of monologue in our head of debate of who cares? The fact that Bitcoin is outpacing every asset out there. Let's absolutely go. With that being said, we got a friend of mine here that I'm on a lot of different spaces with and I have a lot of respect. I hope one day I can know at least a smidgen of what this gentleman knows. That's Mr. Dark Side. How you doing, my good friend?
How you doing, Kelly?
Hey, man, I'm doing good. How do you feel about this market shakeup? Everybody has all the excuses for the news of why price is doing what it's doing. But I'm looking at the chart and I'm saying, hey, the chart's telling me exactly what it wants to do. How are you feeling about this market structure and where we're at?
Yeah, I feel great. Look, huge fan, obviously, of the show, and thank you so much for the kind words. Look, the Bitcoin story goes way past any few days, but as we've discussed in the past, the news that's been kind of flowing through actually since the inauguration has been so bullish. so overwhelmingly bullish that yeah, you get a really positive feeling. I've been in this game since 2013, right? In 2013 I was on a flight to Spain. I read the white paper. I read it about 8 times until I grasped it. I landed on the ground, downloaded an app called Local Bitcoins, went to an ATM machine, met a local Spaniard outside a hotel in Madrid, and I bought 500 euro worth of Bitcoin. And that became my game. I mean, I'm one of these guys from literally within 24 hours after reading the white paper, I had Bitcoin in my possession, right? It just struck me. I was so taken by what was perfect math, by what was clearly going to be the next generation of something very special. Yeah, that's here I am today, 12, 13 years later. And look, the story has gone from, freedom money, something that's really unique and cool, to a pristine collateral asset that can change the world, right? Like, think about where the story has come from to where we are today. I could not be more bullish, right? Like, I see Bitcoin eating gold, eating anything in its path, because it's truly the best neutral reserve asset the world's ever seen.
I agree. So, what would you say to those that are hearing about Bitcoin, or maybe they've been hearing about Bitcoin for a while and it's finally starting to percolate there and they go, but Bitcoin's so high now. Why would I get in now? I've missed the boat.
Well, I would argue that it's never been cheaper than it is today on a risk reward basis, right? So if you think about paying, $5,000 a Bitcoin, 7, 8 years ago, and to where we are today, with the regulatory framework, with institutional adoption. I mean, the thought of institutions buying Bitcoin in 2013 was laughable, right? Think about where we are today, right? Like, we have some of the largest institutions in the world. Look, all you got to do is follow the money, right? BlackRock, BlackRock's the third largest government in the world, right? People
Yeah.
people talk about state adoption. I mean, BlackRock's managing what, $8 trillion now,
I
right?
think they're
Like,
like
they are literally
11, 11,
whatever.
11 or 12. Yeah.
Yeah, they're a gigantic institution, right? Like, they literally are the third largest government in the world. And if they're telling their clients to stack Bitcoin, if they set up an ETF so their clients can get into Bitcoin without having to self custody, then that should tell you pretty much everything you need to know.
Yeah, I mean, and I just have a list here. This is from the Rational Root. He's got a great platform called the Bitcoin Strategy Platform. A lot of just great metrics here, but this is just some of the institutional ETF holders of Bitcoin. Everything: Jane Street, Millennium Management, Goldman Sachs, Susquehanna, Brevin Howard. I mean, the list is just ridiculous here, and this doesn't even include those 12,000 corporations and institutions that have really. I mean, from what we saw. I mean, do you remember? It feels like a millennium ago. January 11th, January 10th, we got the Bitcoin spot ETF approvals. Epoch 1 done. January 11th, the next day, which was already, that was a whole different, I've never seen that in any ETF where, okay, we're getting approval and we're all like, oh, it's going to be 2 or 3 months. And the next day, live, it's like, what is going on? And then within the first quarter, it was something like 1,000, nearly 1,000, 900 and some institutions stacked in. And of course, there's a little flows up and down, like when you see with any asset, any psychological, how people deal with these things. But what we've seen from January of 2023 to all the way, 2024, yeah, January last year to where we're at right now, it's only been, if you smooth it out on a monthly basis, it's been a parabolic uptrend of adoption from corporations, let alone the MicroStrategy playbook, which is starting to feel like it's catching wind of, okay, I might not care about Bitcoin, but I can't not look at this chart and see what it did before Bitcoin and what it's done since. We see it with Metaplanet. We see it with Similar Scientific. GameStop just jumped into the boat. Are we going to see this actually matriculate and get absorbed into things like Google and Apple and Meta and Amazon? Or are they just so big they're not really worried about catching a windfall? Or how do we pay attention to that?
Well, I think they'll go last, right? And primarily because if you're the CFO of Google and you're probably taking home $20 million after bonuses, right? Your upside of buying Bitcoin at this point is extremely low, right? Like, you're already making $20 million a year. Why would you take risk? But for the overwhelming, let's just say the other 99.99% of companies in America, right? Like this is the smartest move you can do is to adopt a Bitcoin treasury strategy. Look, in the end, the stock market is the world's best scorecard, right? And we know who's winning, right? Who's winning is MicroStrategy. They're the best performing asset, I think, over the last 5 years. They're the best performing asset year over year, right? Bitcoin is the best performing asset, and slowly but surely, look, just put everything out of your mind for a second and think about debasement, right? Like, do you hold a dollar? If you hold a dollar bill, you know that in 5 years it's going to buy about 50% of what it buys today, right? If you hold Bitcoin, it's probably going to buy 400% of what it buys today. Who knows, right? Like I'm that bullish on Bitcoin because there's nowhere to hide, right? You're not going to hide in gold, right? Look, Saylor says it best. I could drop you anywhere in the globe with even a few $100 million worth of gold. If I dropped you in Africa, if I dropped you anywhere in the global south, if I dropped you in Asia, if I dropped you in Europe, you're probably dead now, right? You're very lucky if you're able to just get rid of the gold and survive,
Yeah.
right? Like that's a failed asset. Try to get on an airplane, just going from San Francisco to New York. Try to get on an airplane with 20 ounces of gold and see how that goes for you, right? Like they're going to stop you, they're going to pull you over. You're going to have a lot of explaining to do why you have 20 ounces of gold. So it's not portable, right? It's not verifiable. It's not auditable. It's counterfeitable. Like almost at every level, gold fails the test of money versus Bitcoin. So what is there left to buy? What asset can you buy to escape a debasement system? And we know that a fiat-based debt Ponzi scheme is a debasement system, right? The whole system was designed so that when you get money, you spend it and you create a consumer economy, high time preference. Bitcoin flips that over and provides you with an asset that it gives you the ability to have a low time preference because your money actually grows instead of being debased.
Yeah, it's just I've been in the Bitcoin and the crypto markets for about 10 years now, and it's been interesting to watch the evolution of even my social circles and how I could interact with people or not. Even like, in 2017, it started being kind of exciting to talk about Bitcoin once it was above, 8,000 to 20,000. But that was a pretty quick rip there. But then it was like, oh, how are you doing on Bitcoin? Your fake money when we had the crash. And it was only after the 2021, 2022 meltdown, which made it a little difficult again when you had that sort of market meltdown of all the cascading failures out there, which honestly, I think it was a little bit of a silver lining for the market because we needed to have a little bit of a reset of the way over risk of everybody. I mean, even developers and companies out there were like, no, Bitcoin's end all be all, crypto also, all this stuff. And they were just forgetting normal risk parameters of over leveraging themselves and lending. And I'm happy it happened last cycle. And now we have a crypto friendly administration. And moving forward, we're still going to have issues in the ecosystem along the way. But I think that we're on the up and up now. And the conversations I'll talk with people on the street or an Uber driver, there's such a different perception that is sort of shifted now with, there's a growing acceptance in the zeitgeist of Bitcoin being a real, not only opportunity, a real player on the world stage of finance or store of value or spendable currency. And that's the thing I don't think people realize. Different people for different risk ideas and different use cases will see Bitcoin in different ways. In the West, we're like best store of value ever. If you're in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, you're like store of value. Shit, I can't get a bank. I can transact with this to buy coffee. So I think it's funny when a lot of us are on spaces, they think this will never be used that way. Well, maybe in our element of the universe that we're living in, but there's different players and different people. And that's one of the things, to your point, that Bitcoin has so many different use cases beyond what gold does. And it's so much more transmissible. It's so much more efficient. And it's so much easier to store, on a USB stick or on a seed phrase in your head. I don't think the world is ready to really explore what's happening, but it's here, whether they like it or not. And those that hop on this wave are going to have a dramatically different future than those that wait to use it till when they have to use it, because that's the means of trade, transaction, and store value.
Yeah, so a couple things to your point about the collapse in 21. Remember that that was in many ways engineered, right? FTX, I deeply believe was engineered, right? All part of Choke Point 2.0, right? These were attempts to take Bitcoin down, and they failed. But I want to harken back to 2000, March of 2000. I was trading upstairs at the CBOE, and we saw the internet bubble burst, right? And the NASDAQ dropped, what, 80% or more, I believe. And, if you think back to those days, if for all of our technical analysts out there, pull up a weekly chart of the NASDAQ and zoom out to, 1995. And what you'll see is an 80% collapse looks like a blip on the chart of the NASDAQ today, right? Literally a blip. Back in those days, anybody who was trading in March of 2020 and saw the absolute utter collapse of the NASDAQ thought it was the end of the world. Well, here we are 25 years later, and it's hard to even detect what that looks like. Yeah, yes. Pull up the NASDAQ and zoom out. It's mind blowing, right? Like what I think that's the S&P.
That's
But yeah,
NASDAQ. For some reason, it's not giving me I want an older chart.
you go to weekly.
That is a weekly. It's only showing
Hmm.
me back to 2003. Yeah, for some reason it's
Yeah, I
only
don't
showing
know
back to
why.
2003.
Anyway, that was an utter collapse, and the people thought the world was coming to an end, and it turned out it was the greatest buying opportunity, in the history of tech stocks, right? Like there was not a better time in the world than to buy in 2002, 2003, and look where we are today, right? It's mind
Yeah,
blowing,
this is a
100%.
great example right here. This is that crash. I mean, the famous story too is Amazon, right? The tech bubble. And when people call Bitcoin and crypto a bubble, I think it's ridiculous, because when you look at Amazon, it was very much part of a web bubble, right? And it's among the largest companies that's ever existed now in value. And so I do think there's overvaluation that comes in all markets. And then there's something that sort of tests the resolve of every business that's really shakes off not only weak hands and speculators, but also the weak business propositions, product market fit and forward-looking innovation. And I mean, great opportunity here. Another great opportunity here. 2008. Oh my God, it's over. Okay, well, it's so over. What happened for people that bought when it was over? This is just a NASDAQ. This is not Bitcoin. That's a 700% move from 2008 for people that are just holding traditional assets, let alone you come over here and look at Bitcoin, and it's like, for some reason, there we go. There we go. That market meltdown here. Oh my God, the economy shut down. It's dead. I always tell people, if you're worried about it, ignore the tops. Just look at the parabolic trend that we've seen on the lows. On the lows in Bitcoin has been aggressively higher, and every step of the way on the way up. I mean, I could not be more excited about this. And you know what excites me about this is, as we're talking about, we have this new administration. I never meant this channel to be political, and I don't want it to be political. However, when we're seeing the difference in one political party versus another, and how they've supported or completely denied the innovation in the space and embrace it, I think we can. I think the new administration came in at a pivotal time because of where we're at on the roadmap for Bitcoin and what this means to the future. And so now, not only do we have these issues with runaway, I don't want to say runaway inflation, but runaway money printing. I was talking with TJ about this earlier, TJ here from Discover Crypto, about I hate morally the fact that we have money printing. However, I know it's an inevitability with fiat systems. So because of that, I'm doing everything I can to have the best capture mechanism of that devaluation of the dollar, which also means the rise in price for Bitcoin over time. And then we have all these issues with the trade wars and money and the national debt. And I wanted to get your thoughts on, they talked about budget neutral ways to buy Bitcoin and also other mechanisms and financial products outside of ETFs that could be delivered. And I do think are going to have a very strong chance of being rolled out in the near future. Bit bonds. What the hell is a bit bond? How is that important to Bitcoin? And what could that mean for buying pressure coming into the future?
All right. First, before we jump into bit bonds, let's just you hit on an important point, right? You said, well, we have runaway inflation. No, we have runaway money printing, right? And I think it's important to recognize that inflation is always a monetary effect. It's too much money chasing too few goods, right? And when you say runaway inflation, you're not wrong. We do have runaway inflation, except that the United States has constructed itself in such a way that we're able to export our inflation to the rest of the world. So that while we're not feeling runaway inflation here, while we had a very high bout of it, the rest of the world is feeling runaway inflation. Emerging economies are feeling runaway inflation because we're exporting that inflation to the world by purchasing their goods. So I don't think you're wrong on that. And I think that's at the basis of a lot of the trade tensions and global tensions that we're seeing, because when the US exports inflation to the rest of the world, we are stealing from them, right? And at some point, the rest of the world says, wait a minute, this isn't working for us. Now, bit bonds, the most important and the most exciting subject that I've heard in my lifetime, right? This is an ability to intertwine Bitcoin into the US financial system and repair the balance sheet. Remember, we can never pay down the US debt, right? That's a myth. A debt based fiat Ponzi scheme requires more debt to be paid in order to pay the interest on the existing debt, right? And you know, Simon Dixon does this so well, right? He explains it this way: if you and I start an economy, a debt-based money system, and we create our first $1,000 by me issuing you $1,000 loan with a 10% interest rate. Okay, so now we have $1,000 in our economy, but guess what? You owe me $1,100 at the end of a year. And unless we find or are able to print and create another loan, then the $100 that you owe me in interest does not exist. So the only way you can pay me back that $100 is if we create another loan, another debt. Right now, there's $2,000 in the system, 2,200 are owed, right? But at least the 1,100 exists for you to pay me back. For the next guy to get paid back, another loan has to be created, and on and on and on.
Yeah.
So every loan that's ever been created requires another loan to be created in order for the money to exist to pay back the interest on the existing loan. Let's get to BitBots. Okay, so the New Markets Capital CEO comes before, I think, the Bitcoin Policy Institute, and he proposes, okay, the U.S. has $9 trillion to finance in 2025. Why don't we take $2 trillion and refinance that by issuing bit bonds? So his proposal was to issue $2 trillion in bit bonds. The government would sell these bit bonds at a 1% coupon for 10 years, solving one huge problem for the US government, or two huge problems. One is getting a 1% interest rate as opposed to the current 4.3%. But the second is moving our duration from bills, short-term borrowing out to 10 years. Okay, now how does he get a 1% interest rate when there's a current 4.3% interest rate? Is he takes $2 trillion that comes in from selling the bonds, and he takes 10% of that and buys Bitcoin and puts it into escrow. Okay, and the concept is over 10 years, as Bitcoin continues to appreciate, even at a modest 25% CAGR, we're currently up at a 45% CAGR, right? If you do the math over that 10 years, the return on the Bitcoin is such that the bond would end up yielding north of 10%. Okay, so very simple. His concept is 2 trillion comes in, 200 billion goes to buy Bitcoin. At the end of 10 years, the government and the investor split that Bitcoin 50-50. The government will guarantee the full return of principal and will also guarantee the 4.3% that was currently being paid. So the investor is essentially taking no risk, right? The government is getting a 1% coupon, right? And counting on the Bitcoin to appreciate. And with some derivatives work around the government side of that Bitcoin, the 100 billion of the 200 billion that the government's going to get, they can simply put on derivative trades to lock in the 4.3% and also the to guarantee the principal. So it's essentially a no risk approach from my perspective on a way for the government to capture a substantial amount of upside in the Bitcoin. Now, from the investor's point of view, and who are the investors? The investors are the pension funds. The investors are Social Security. All of these underfunded um, pools of capital will now be looking at a potential 10, maybe even 15 or 20% return, right, on a bond. Now, if that happens, what happens to their underfunded problem? It begins to go away. If you're a pension fund and you buy a government bond that ends up yielding, let's say 12%, let's be conservative, wow, like, you were expecting to get 4.3%, you got 12%, that begins to fix a lot of problems. Now, all of this doesn't come without consequences, right? If you're able to do this, right, what does that do to US home prices? What does that do to the stock market, right? If the government bond is yielding 12%, do you really want to buy a second home? Do you really want to buy rental real estate, right? Isn't it just better to take the 12% from the government? Do you really want to buy an emerging tech stock when you could literally just get 12% from the government, right? So you can see how there's not knock-on consequences to doing this. And this speaks to the problem, right? If you can't introduce hard money into the system without potentially breaking it, then wow, you have a real problem, right? Like this is telling you that these knock-on problems are a effect of the fact that the money is broken. But they're not without solutions. Like as an example, the government could issue a few $1 trillion worth of bit bonds and then guarantee 1.5% mortgages for anybody who wants to buy them, subsidize them, right? Like that's a form of stimulus that solves a lot of problems that we have today in the housing market, right? The government would be borrowing money at 1%, they'd be guaranteeing mortgages, let's just use 2%, right? Like if anybody who wants to get a house, a first home, could get a 2% mortgage, right? That helps the housing market, but more than that, it helps the common person, right? It helps you, it helps me, it helps anybody who wants to buy a home, right? Get into real estate. It also would help buoy real estate prices. So there are solutions to these knock-on problems, but ultimately the real problem is as we all think interest rates are high at 4.3%. I'll just remind people, not to date myself, but when I got into this game in the late 80s, I remember selling a Washington Public Power municipal bond that had a 19% coupon, right? A municipal bond with a 19% coupon. So interest rates are while they're high at 4.3%, they're far too low, right? They punish people that try to save and they encourage people to spend. But as we know, savings is a good thing for a society. Savings creates low time preference, right? And that's why Bitcoin's done so well, is because people are saving in Bitcoin and they're winning, right? It's created a savings vehicle. Now, earlier you mentioned, and I just want to go back and touch on it. You were talking about, the ability to use Bitcoin to actually transact. And I have I do spaces with you, Kelly. I also do spaces um, on my own, and I ran into an account that's absolutely amazing. We call him O. He's from Nigeria, and he comes on our space and lays out how in Nigeria today they're using Bitcoin to transact. They're using layer two. They're using Lightning. They're using Fediments. They are they are all in on Bitcoin. They have a currency which is basically worthless. One of their Lara, I think it is called, is now equal to one sat. Their dollar is one sat, right? Like it's going down that fast. The official exchange rate is one thing, And then there's a black market exchange rate, which you'll see in many of these emerging market currencies, right? That was going on in Argentina. Whenever you have high inflation rates, people will do anything to get dollars, right? And it's very difficult. So you end up with black market, conversion rates from the currency to dollars. But they look, Bitcoin in the wild, Bitcoin in where it's being adopted out of necessity, not out of desire, is being used to fuel economies, and it's happening today, right? It's on a small scale. It hasn't really grown out yet, but these layer twos, Lightning, layer threes with sediments and eCash and e-tokens, these are being used every day in the global south. So yeah, don't discount what's coming, right? Like we're not that far away. We're not there yet, but we're not that far away from Bitcoin being able to be used, at a layer two level to buy a cup of coffee, to replace what I'll call US dollar rails, which are very expensive to use. And one last point on this is that stable coins, and we haven't gotten there yet, but I think it's an important point. Stable coins give the ability to get dollars into the hands of people around the world. Like USAID, obviously extremely difficult to talk about. I don't know what the right word is, but crazy situation. But
Controversial,
USA
yeah.
controversial, yeah. So USAID, you know, their main goal was to get dollars into the rest of the world, to export the US dollar, to create dollar dominance. Obviously it fails because when you send dollars anywhere in the world, if you try to send dollars over to Egypt, okay, what happens? Those dollars have to go through SWIFT. They have to go through a banking system, right? They end up being absorbed by the politicians, take 20%. Whatever's left after the politicians get their piece, the bankers take the rest of it. And those dollars never get down to the people, right? The people end up transacting in their own worthless currencies, which are being, if you think we're debasing ours, go to the third world and see how they debase currencies. So this concept of using stable coins on crypto rails, right? It enables peer-to-peer payment of dollars, right? For the first time, if I wanted to, have you ever used the app Fiverr or any of these type
Yeah,
of,
absolutely.
yeah. So you contract with somebody in India to produce a website for you, right? You want to send them dollars. You're really happy with the job they did. You put in your credit card. Well, guess what? They don't get your dollars, right? They get their local currency from their local bank. Well, stablecoins changes that. Stablecoins lets me pay the individual on the other end of my Fiverr transaction directly in US dollars. And you can see where these stablecoins can all of a sudden get into the hands of individuals as opposed to being absorbed by the political infrastructure and the banking infrastructure of these countries. So I think stablecoins in the wild are probably the most important development as far as helping the world, right, get off of their broken fiat systems and onto a better broken fiat system. But ultimately, this is all headed in the direction of Bitcoin. And look, if you can use bit bonds to rescue the US balance sheet, which I think you can, right? Remember, debt inside of itself is not a bad thing. If you have $10 million and you're $500,000 in debt, you don't think you have a problem, right? The problem the US has is our debt to GDP is too low. If our GDP was 5x what it is today, we wouldn't be talking about our debt. Nobody would be concerned about our debt, right? So
Right.
it's not the debt that's the problem. It's the lack of growth and the fact that all of our growth has come from government spending.
So on that note, I'd love, because I don't want to keep you here all day, and I got a question or two more for you. First, before I get to that, I just want to highlight everybody. Make sure you're following Darkside 2030 underscore at Darkside 2030 underscore. He has great, he's, I can't believe you're not one of those 2 or 3 or 400,000 person accounts. Every time I see you, I'm like, how do people not know about this guy? Cause you give such great points on spaces, and you share a lot of great content throughout the daily basis. So everybody make sure you're following him. When you're looking at this cycle, there's been nonstop sort of battle of considering what's going on with this what feels like somewhat entrenched 4-year cycle. But then there's other debates or arguments to be made, like from people like Tech Dev, who's got some great charts referencing that maybe Satoshi Nakamoto was just brilliant enough to lay out a 210,000 block cycle, which is about 4 years, that also overlays with the election cycle, that also overlays with the sort of global liquidity cycles and the ISM cycles and all these things. But when you strip that back and we think about the halving and we think about these massive upswings and then these, previously 80% and then, 81% and then 77%, how do you see this going forward? Has the dynamic supporting or limiting or what we see the rollout of Bitcoin into the next 4, 8, 12 years, are the cycles going to be somewhat, do you think they're going to be a bit different now that we have this corporate, institutional, and sovereign money coming in to Bitcoin? Are we going to just see a sort of stair stepping on the way up, potentially a 40% pullback, 50% pullback here and there? How do you see this going into 2025, the end of 25, 26, and beyond?
Yeah, I think the 4-year cycle's dead. Yeah, I'm here to actually officially declare it dead.
Say
Um,
that one more time.
yeah, I'm here to officially declare the 4-year cycle dead.
Mm.
For all you cycle fans, I'm sorry, but it has met its demise. And all you have to look at is institutional adoption versus right the mining reward. Right, the mining reward has been cut so low. We're down $45 million a day, I believe now. Or 45. Where are we at? Oh,
The mining
yeah,
reward is
about
3.125 Bitcoin.
right. So I mean, the amount of Bitcoin that's being mined every day is being easily absorbed by even a small amount of the ETF. Right. Like it doesn't really matter anymore. I think from here on out, you will see bull and bear markets. So from that point, all assets are cyclical, but I don't. I can't make a good argument in my head for any type of cycle related to the halvening. Now that being said, that doesn't mean that mining companies still won't see, boom bust. Look, the mining industry is really, really difficult, and made even more difficult by trade tensions. So yeah, I may not be very bullish on mining, and let's throw in nation state adoption and huge. Remember, mining, which started out as a pure profit center, has now become something else. And I'll throw props here to Jason Lowry and his thesis. But in the end, if you don't have block space, if you're not winning blocks, then you can't transact in Bitcoin from a nation state level, right? The ability to get your transactions onto a block is what will drive nation states into mining, right? It may even drive MicroStrategy at some point into mining, right? Like that, you need to be able to transact. You need to be able to create the template, right? If there's 4,000 transactions per block and there's a block every 10 minutes, well, that's not a ton of block space, right? So block space is going to become extremely precious. Don't be surprised if we don't see, in the near future, actually a futures market for block space, right? Where we actually see block space being traded as a commodity. And I would not be surprised to see that. And therefore, mining blocks takes on a sort of a different, uh, it's not just a monetary need, right? At some level, it becomes a nation state need, it becomes a corporate need. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see just a mass push into the mining industry. And we're seeing it, right? The hash rate is just exploding and exploding higher. And there's a reason for that, which is that block space is precious. Right. So it's not just about the mining reward. It's about the ability to transact on the network. And I think people need to understand that.
I couldn't be more bullish. I mean, just as we're wrapping out, I just want to just remind people. I mean, it's like the chart was telling us the whole time, just on an analytical level, the retrace down, everybody was losing their minds. And I was just waiting for a tap of this zone and seeing what the RSI was looking like as we did that. And we got the bullish divergence. We got a tap of a previous range high. This is just a near term sort of analysis, everybody. But you zoom out and realize this has only been a bullish trend. In fact, when we go back to 2017, we saw 11 moves of 15% or more all the way to the upside. 8 of them, I think it was like 25 to 45% to the downside, on the way from $200 all the way up to just shy of 20,000. And in this cycle, it's felt choppier, but I consider it kind of the most luxurious bull market we've had yet in Bitcoin, because we've had, a number of 20% moves. We had, a near 30%, but in all reality, this market cycle has been met by, okay, more bullish than you can ever really plan for, but it just means also that we've needed to be a little bit more patient, and which also means for those that have a long-term strategy, there's been great opportunities along the way. And in fact, I have it somewhere. Let me see if I can find it real quick. The real plan C. Let me see if I can find this. I don't know why. There we go. Let's go to Kellam. Let's go to my page. Real Plan C did a post yesterday that he did a poll. Let me see if I can zoom out here. He did a poll and had thousands of people. He's got like 11,000 people now, of will Bitcoin pass 200K in 2025? Now, the number is irrelevant, but this is what is actually striking: 50-50. I haven't seen a poll, I think, done since I've been on Twitter where it's literally 50-50. And I actually love this. This actually shows a pretty healthy state of the market to me. Now, this isn't looking at deep data like perpetual funding rates and, how many people are long and short and all this kind of nonsense. This is just the sentiment. This is, there's not huge, and I said this, there's no overweighted conviction either direction, which to me is like, okay, we're finally getting as split as that seems for me, that says, hey, there's some clarity coming into the market, because we have some over-convicted people. We have some people, managing their risk on, I don't know where it's going to go. I don't want everybody to think it's going to break 200K 2025. That means it most definitely won't. And I also don't want everybody to think it's going to crash to $10,000 or something nonsense, because it just wrecks far too many people. And I think we're in such a beautiful place with this market, the structure, the capital channels, the empowerment, the regulation, meaningful regulations with people like Paul Atkins coming in, Scott Bessent, who's a Bitcoiner. Cantor Fitzgerald, Howard Lutnick. I literally am beside myself that anybody has anything bearish to say, unless they're looking at a 15-minute chart. And then I'm like, what are you doing right now? Let's take a look at where this is going, because this is the most forward-looking market I've ever bear witness to, and I can't believe people are worried about something over the next 3 weeks, 3 months. It's like anything to the downside for me is an incredible buying opportunity. Would you agree with that, or am I way off of la la land?
Yeah, I mean, look, I look at it this way. The opportunity to buy Bitcoin at under a tenth of a million is ridiculous. Right? We're going to be talking about Bitcoin in multi-million dollar terms. Right?
Mm.
I have utter conviction, whether that's, next year, this year, I don't know. I don't know exactly when it happens, but you can't continue down the road we're going, right? The debt-based Ponzi scheme is shuddering, right? All of this volatility that you're witnessing in Bitcoin, it's not volatility in Bitcoin, it's volatility in dollars. One Bitcoin equals one Bitcoin, right? Like, we're witnessing the shuttering of the system. When we see bonds down, stocks down, dollar down, gold up, Bitcoin up, these are things that we, as a TradFi guy, I've been in this since the late 80s, never seen this before, right? The system is literally being brought to its knees because it's over indebted. And remember, when the government needs to refinance $9 trillion in debt, all of that capital is being sucked out of all of the other systems in the world to refinance the debt, right? That's the real problem. Everybody in the real economy is now competing with the US government for dollars. And that's a tough competitor, because they have a printing press and you don't. But ultimately, there's an escape. There's an off ramp from this broken fiat Ponzi scheme. It's Bitcoin, right? Just buy Bitcoin, right? Hold it in self custody. If you don't know how, there's a wonderful account out there, BTC Sessions, that will help you. He's got a ton of videos on the subject, right? Like, just get off of zero. That's what you have to do today, whether that's $100. Look, I tell people, just do your first transaction. Go buy $50 worth of Bitcoin, send it to a friend, have them send it back to you. Like, learn how to use this thing. Because once your eyes are open, you're not going to be able to shut them. Like this is I like to say this: you can't unsee Bitcoin, right? Once you're in, right? Like I don't know many people that got into Bitcoin who really like did their homework, did their work, transacted in Bitcoin, sent it around, and then said, "Yeah, this isn't for me." I don't know that person. If they're out there, you find them for me. Because in the end, this is the off ramp. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. So get off zero, go get yourself $100 worth of Bitcoin. If you don't own any, send it to a friend, have them send it back to you. You'll be absolutely blown away by what we have.
The difference between the US dollar or any fiat system and Bitcoin is the difference of choosing to swim upstream to get something somewhere miles away or getting in a rocket ship to get there in a matter of moments. I mean, I cannot even begin to impress how different these systems are and more efficient and more effective, and also provides you financial sovereignty. We are on the cusp. We are in the middle of this event horizon. I can't believe I'm so honored to have this conversation with you. And everybody, I just also want to just remind you again, make sure you go and follow Dark Side of the Moon right here at darkside2030 _. I will share this in the live chat as well. He does great Twitter spaces throughout the day. He posts great content. And again, I really do appreciate you coming on. I look forward to having you on again, especially as this market sort of does its chop suey over the next couple weeks. And I can't wait to see more and more flippenings of people that were especially vocal on X about so much. I mean, the proof is going to be in the pudding on these charts, but we got to roll for now. I appreciate you coming on. Do you have anything that you'd like to close with?
I don't know, Kelly. I would just say, look, I couldn't be more bullish. I can't tell you it's going to the moon, but if I were you, I'd take your spacesuit to the cleaners.
I'll close it with this chart right here. Supply and demand is the number one driver of everything that happens in speculated markets. Bitcoin has performed so incredibly well in this space, all the way from here to where essentially right here, 2022. And all this period was a dramatic increase of supply over time, while we had an overwhelming increase of demand that outpaced that new available supply. Now, what are we seeing now? We're in a whole different ecosystem now, where from here forward, we're only going to see a decrease in available supply, while we're also still yet on the cusp of that wave of adoption. Remember, Bitcoin is outpacing the speed of adoption that we saw with the internet. And if that's to be true, then between now and 2031, we're going to have a 10x in the number of users, while we're also seeing a reduction in available supply. I mean, guys, strap in, because this is it. I mean, it really is. It's not me saying it. It's not Dark Side over here trying to sell an Amway product. No, it doesn't matter if you guys buy or not. I'm okay. Dark Side's okay. Everybody else in this market's going to be okay. The proof is going to be and the wave of integrations, utility, and adoptions that are coming on a state level, corporate level, institutional level, but most importantly, all of y'all's level. Again, what a great conversation. I appreciate you coming on, Dark Side. I'll reach out to you. I'm sure I'll see you on Spaces, and I'll reach out to get you scheduled again soon. Thank you very
Thank
much,
you,
good
Kelly.
sir.
Really enjoyed it.
Absolutely, my friend. I appreciate you. Now, everybody else, thank you all for tuning in. I know we've got probably 10,000 or more of you watching on Rumble. We got about 2,745 of you watching between Twitter and YouTube. Make sure you're hitting that like button, subscribe, and ding the bell. We don't just ask that. Everything that we do with all this content we're putting out for free is driven also by y'all's engagement. Even hitting the like button is a great way just to give back and show that you're paying attention and you're tuned in. I love you. I appreciate y'all. Make sure you protect yourself, protect your crypto so you can protect your future. Head over to getarculus.com. Best crypto cold storage solution out there. Getarculus.com. Use code BitLab10 for 10% off your Arculus. And of course, thank you to our channel partners, L Bank. Great competition going on there. Remember, trade at your own risk. We got a lot of different things that we're trying to break down all the signals and what we're seeing in the chart, but ultimately it comes down to the decisions you're making. But this is our partner bank, our exchange, I should say, L Bank. That link is in the description down below. It's also pinned in the top of the live comments there. Trade smart. Make sure you're doing everything you can to keep up. If you are watching on Rumble, hit that like button. Follow. We just launched this account about 4 days ago. We are in partnership with Rumble, so They are supporting a lot of the content that we're doing here. So we're getting a lot of viewership there. If you are tuned in, we appreciate you. Big love to everybody out there. Again, I hope you all have a wonderful day. I'm going to send you all, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm sending you over to Blockchain Basement. If you're watching on Rumble, I'm going to send you over to Blockchain Basement as well. If you're watching on Twitter, go check out Blockchain Basement. I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. That's all we got for now. Dark Side, if you want to hang around, I can talk to you after the show. You all have a wonderful day. Adios, muchachos.